Castlevania Portrait of Ruin is a great game and everybody should play it. It takes the best bits from various Castlevanias, removes the crap, and offers enough interesting new ideas without outstaying its welcome. What has changed from Dawn of Sorrow, and what I personally believe should be celebrated as a national holiday, Portrait of Ruin completely does away with Dawn's ham-fisted touchscreen gimmicks. There may be a cute little thing here or there, or some quality of life thing like being able to tap where you want to go when warping. However, if you're expecting some major mechanic like drawing out a seal after every boss fight, you'll find no such thing. That's not to say the touchscreen has been completely abandoned, just relegated to an extra mode, but we can get to that later. The map is larger than Dawn of Sorrow, with portraits helping to flesh out that scale, yet the game still has a strong focus. The space doesn't feel wasted. Portraits bring locations that feel varied and unique. You get this sense that the devs were excited to stretch their legs outside of the confines of a castle setting. Portrait of Ruin also introduces a fun variety of side quests which offer rewards like stat boosts, equipment, and abilities, which complements the explorative gameplay loop that Igavania offers. An unfortunate surprise upon revisiting this title was its removal of 2 equipment sets as well as item fusing. My assumption is that because you use 2 characters, the devs felt you already technically have 2 loadouts to play around with, but it would be nice to have the extra slots, as I found myself looking at my inventory more often in this game than its predecessor. Why item fusing or forging is gone, however, after being in both Dawn of Sorrow and Curse of Darkness is completely beyond me, as this gives more of an incentive to keep equipment and adds another layer to how a player can build their characters. On that note, the biggest change from Dawn to Portrait is you controlling not 1, but 2 characters this time around, harkening back to Castlevania 3, the best NES Castlevania, as well as the excellent Julius mode from Dawn of Sorrow. Because you have 2 characters, it gave the designers the ability to create 2 distinctly different playstyles while also reintroducing Classicvania mechanics. You basically have a souped up Trevor and Saiho at your disposal, with both characters having vastly different equipment options. Jonathan wields a large arsenal of weaponry as you might expect of your typical Igavania protagonist, as well as getting access to special command moves and various sub-weapons. What Charlotte may lack in core weaponry, she more than makes up for in her magical capabilities. These are especially interesting since you can charge up spells this time around, allowing for extra damage. The sheer number of spells at her disposal is unreal. She can temporarily alter stats, cause devastating offensive attacks like pillars of ice, bolts of lightning, or walls of flame, as well as being able to transform into various creatures, not unlike Alucard or Soma Cruz. Charlotte's utility cannot be understated, and her inclusion opens the game up to an even greater variety of options when playing through. You also have item crashers back, now named Dual Crushers. These are awesome screen-wide attacks that rip through foes like butter. I can't help but marvel at how flashy many of the attacks are. The partner system is utilized in numerous ways for puzzles, platforming, and especially combat, and it all feels great. Finding different combinations of weaponry, sub-weapons, magic, and item crashers is just fun. That Igavania freedom is prevalent in this game. It's intoxicating. I absolutely loved finding different ways to mess up bosses. I found myself using my partner to create devious pincer attacks or to even work as a decoy, and in one fight in particular involved leaving Charlotte to charge a spell that instantly finishes the fight but leaves her vulnerable to attacks. So as Jonathan, your job is to protect her from the incoming barrage. The partner system also opens the game up to puzzles involving switching between the two, adding an extra layer to the core gameplay when exploring the castle, but not in a way that feels intrusive to the formula. Speaking of ways to vary the game, portraits are like a better version of the Castle A, Castle B switching from Harmony of Dissonance, since they are played more as a contained stage and help keep the main castle clear and concise. Furthermore, the castle structure itself invokes thoughts of Lament of Innocence's more hub-world castle design. Unlike Lament though, you still have an actual Igavania style castle to explore, getting the best of both worlds. While the Soul system was quite popular, its removal helped streamline the game a lot more. I don't know, there isn't really a point where I found myself punching the same ghost in the face, hoping, wishing, praying that it would hit that fucking 5% drop chance just so I can get a fucking lightning punch. Please, I just want to play the rest of the fucking game. Having two characters to use feels like the natural progression of Igavania. While prior games all had their unique mechanics, Portrait of Ruin's so-called gimmick complements and enhances the formula instead of limiting it. The combat is dynamic. As soon as you get tired of one vampire hunter, you can switch to another and get a very different feeling experience. Having both characters out also makes the work of going through the enemy gauntlet much smoother. The game has this excellent sense of pace, and when hit, your partner loses MP instead of health, so it never feels especially risky to keep both out. Building Jonathan and Charlotte in this game works in a very simple way. While the two will be able to find different gear and level up as they go, they also will level up their sub-weapons and magic respectively by defeating enemies. It's not something I thought much about at the beginning, however by the end of the game I found myself obsessed with seeing how strong some of these abilities can get. The fact I can say I kicked the hell out of one boss in particular by making Jonathan throw pies at them the whole time, I believe speaks for itself. Bosses are pretty cool. They stay with you not just because they have gorgeous sprites, but because they're actually neat in design, with some even playing around with the fact you have two characters to use. Astarte is one of the most memorable in this regard, since she can seduce Jonathan into fighting for her. If you manage to beat her when this happens, you even get an extra scene where Charlotte will chastise Jonathan over it. Many bosses play out like a unique puzzle to solve, a test of not only your ability but your wit to outsmart the obstacle block in the path. Death once more is a show stealer, an intense scrap that shifts resistances and weaknesses to strength and magic respectively, requiring you to switch characters to keep dealing any significant damage. They also have a nasty attack involving the lead character being locked into place by a set of chains. If you don't switch partners and break the lock in time, you are instantly killed. It's one of the best examples of bosses being both a spectacle to behold, but also an exciting and engaging challenge to overcome. One of the game's greatest challenges is the Nest of Evil, a multi-floored gauntlet of enemies and bosses. It's similar to the battle arena in Circle of the Moon, a completely optional area that rewards you some of the strongest equipment in the game. The Nest is a real test of your skill that expands on the arena by including enemies and bosses from Dawn of Sorrow. It's a cool way of reusing and remixing already existing assets from prior Castlevanias. The inclusion of Dawn's bosses showcases how much more involved Portrait's boss design is, focusing on the function over the spectacle. And being able to revisit these fights helped make Portrait a complete experience by giving us the best of both. And there's no messing with the touchscreen. I also found the game's plot to be pretty satisfying too. Being a sequel to Bloodlines was an interesting way to go, and helps tie that game into the Igavania timeline quite neatly. Jonathan not being a Belmont and therefore having to essentially earn his way into being able to use the vampire killer is a change of pace, with the mystery box this time surrounding the identity of Wind, as well as this new family of vampires. I found that the game doesn't bog itself down too much in ramping up the mystery and gives us time to really know our protagonists, so we can actually like them and kind of care about what happens. Soma and Hector may be cool looking characters, however Jonathan and Charlotte outshine them by actually having personalities. On that note, the entire game in general is loaded with personality. It really felt like the devs were thinking of every single detail while making this game. Early on, there is an enemy who will attack you if you're playing as Jonathan, but if you use Charlotte, will get to one knee and present a bundle of roses while confessing his love for her, leaving him completely open to be attacked. This moment in particular told me that I was going to be in for a ride from start to finish. There are so many fun, silly little details or Easter eggs like this. If you just hold up on the D-pad for a few seconds, your character will strike a cool victory pose. If you set the date on your system to your birthday, the shopkeeper will sell you a birthday cake. Press a specific button combination on the title screen and you can even change the voice language to Japanese. You can have a secret conversation with the shopkeeper by holding your pose, or even attack him and cause him to run away. Enemies may say different things based on which character is in the lead. The way the two animate is full of these small little details, like the way Charlotte lands when dropping from a great height, or Jonathan's action hero motions when performing a combat role, or command motion melee attacks. Who can forget the way the characters simply shout each other's names when switching, or yelling out their dual crushes like this is some kind of Sentai show. There's a room where you can find a bar with a skeleton bartender who will slide all the way across the counter and drop to the floor when you attack them. The path to getting the true ending requires you to turn Charlotte into a frog at some point to get a certain spell, and just look, someone even thought to put a little book on her sprite. These are the kinds of things that I feel really bring Portrait of Ruin to life. Its charm is truly infectious. As for the sprites themselves, Igarashi's team has a mastery over the craft, along with the implementation of 3D models, usage of parallax, and subtle, silky smooth animations. It's been a treat to see the visual improvements build up over the years to create some of the best looking 2D games of its time. The generic mid-aught anime avatars, much like Dawn of Sorrow, are really the only thing holding the presentation back. It's not as immediately obvious since Portrait's opening animation makes the decision of using 3D models in its FMV instead of Dawn's low-quality 2D effort, and although the anime style was an improvement over the prior game, it does few favors for the character designs, making them look rather bland with flat colors and a lack of flourish. One look at Jonathan and Charlotte's illustrations in later spin-off games with Ayami Kojima's graceful hand shows you just how appealing these character designs really are. As for the music, all killer, every single song slaps. Yamane truly outdid herself yet again for this title. The song loops are notably longer than past handheld titles, giving them more room to breathe and not get tiring. We have a varied mix of funky gothic grooves to bone-chilling atmospheric pieces. Hail from the Past is a great example of how Portrait's painting world format gives room for more experimentation in the songs, as Yamane is not entirely beholden to this castle theme. This again only lends to helping the game's sense of pace, as locations have more of a distinct look and feel, therefore they don't get stale hours into the adventure.
Actually, this time I've asked another composer to contribute to the soundtrack, the legendary Yuzo Koshiro, who is a really big fan of past Castlevania games, and has a really good grasp of the series. He contributed 5 songs to Portrait of Ruin. His involvement really stimulated my own creativity and inspired me to create many different kinds of music.
And this only helps elevate the soundtrack into audible heaven. Who's Yuzo Koshiro, you ask? Yeah, that's fucking Yuzo Koshiro. Portrait of Ruin also includes your standard boss rush mode, as well as an intriguing co-op mode. It doesn't let you play through the whole campaign, however, and sadly I was unable to try it out due to the lack of another person rocking a DS and a copy of the game. You are blessed with a whopping 3 different characters to play as. Sisters mode is a unique playstyle in which you use the touchscreen to attack and the D-pad to fly across the screen, effectively changing entirely how Portrait is played. It was an incredibly wise decision to keep this as a separate playstyle, as well as removing platforming as an issue when utilizing the touchscreen. Richter mode brings the staple play as a Belmont playthrough, but this time with the added inclusion of Rondo of Blood's version of Maria. The partner system operates in the same way as Jonathan and Charlotte, and unlike Julius mode, Richter returns with his entire Symphony of the Night moveset. While this playthrough does not have the cool what-if scenario of Julius mode, the gameplay is deeply satisfying. Lastly is the peculiar addition of armor mode. What is there to say? You play as an axe armor. I don't even remember this. Am I being pranked by the spirit of Igarashi or something? Someone? Anyone? I need answers, please. The response at the time for Portrait of Ruin, while strong, showed critics were becoming tired of the formula solidified by Symphony of the Night. While arguably, Portrait is a perfection of this module, you could even argue an improvement over what came before. This is the best Igavania I've played so far, and a must-play for any fan. However, does the swan song of the Igavania franchise outshine its heights? And that was Portrait of Ruin. I hope you enjoyed it, despite the long wait. Follow me on all the stuff on the screen that you can see. At the moment that I'm recording this, the last video I uploaded was just over 2 years ago. And I've been relatively silent, save for a post I made on Patreon about 10 months ago. So yeah, what's the deal with that? Where the hell have I been? I was going through a difficult time financially, which kind of meant I had to take more time at my job, which just caused a lot of pressure and caused a lot of stress, and consequently meant that this video was being made at a much slower rate. I actually had the script completely finished just over a year ago, and all of my audio had been recorded about 10 months ago. Things were starting to get better, the ball was starting to roll, and then things got worse. Unfortunately, last year I then went through a deeply traumatic incident that basically led to me having a complete meltdown. I had to take almost 2 months off of work, as well as sign up for specialist counselling. Because of this, the channel was basically put on hiatus. I just was not in a mentally good place to even look at the channel or comments or anything to do with anything really. I just wasn't functioning. I really cannot thank enough everyone that's ever just supported this channel or said something nice to me in the comments section and things like that. It's really cool. It's always really cool. I also really want to thank Stevem for supporting me during all of this time. We've been really close friends for just over a decade now, and honestly, without him, I don't actually think I would have been able to continue this channel, if I'm being blunt. That's pretty much it. That's where I've been for 2 years. I'm in a way better place now than I was. Hence why this video is out and exists, and the channel isn't dead. It's not dead. And all I can say is just, yeah, please look forward to the next video when it eventually comes out. Hopefully it's at a much faster rate. I'm planning on it being at a much faster rate. But yeah, thank you so much for watching.